Well, I do have some turkeys in there, and those will go up first, but it all goes up at the same time.
Okay,
And then you just don't power them, you power things up differently.
okay.
I just thought about this, but how long does it take you to mow? What's
Okay, we
that?
are
I can
live.
help.
You
Yeah,
can help me
Yeah,
out.
we're done.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
done.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Everyone is, oh, Vicky is not present. She had a conflict tonight, but everyone else is in attendance this evening. The mission statement, the Baroque Area School District provides a quality education for all students that inspires continuous learning, positive relationships, curiosity, and compassion, and an environment that welcomes diversity while developing respectful and responsible citizens. Proof of public notice. Per Wisconsin statutes, notice of this special meeting was posted on Thursday, October 23rd, 2020, per Tom Burkhalter, District Administrator. I'd like a motion indicating the resolve of notice being legally posted. Is there a second?
Okay.
All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Winter sports update.
Sorry, Richard.
No, we're good. Eric, you have some information for us?
He's, did you share it with me or?
I did.
Okay.
Just wanted to do it. What do you?
I'm gonna have you come so that people could see you.
Well, he's gonna put a presentation up there.
Oh,
so I
okay.
can't see me. I didn't plan that.
So I just thought of it as probably to share this one. Share.
Can Robert and Marina see this?
Yep, I can see it.
Great.
All right, just kind of recapping the fall. We had, as you can see, we had 12 teams participating. We had girls tennis, girls golf, middle school and high school cross country, volleyball, 7th and 8th grade, C team, JV, and varsity, the middle school and C team and varsity football. So that's the 12 teams that we had going this fall. We participated in 55 different events and we hosted 21 different home events. So it's pretty good. We went from not knowing if we'd have anything to going to quite a few and hosting quite a few events here. Student participation, we had 70 middle school students participate, 105 high school for a total of 175. Missed time, we had no known cases contributed to sports participation here at our school. We had under 12% of all athletes, including middle school, who missed some time during the season due to county COVID protocols. So there was less than 12% of our, and that could be one day. That could be one day. It could be for some students that could be 3 weeks, depending on, you know. And one of the things I'd say about that is our students did a really good job of, if somebody had a cold, somebody came down with a sore throat, they went in, they stayed home, they went in, got tested, you know, and then that takes 3 to 4 days. So, you know, it's a pretty good, it's a number. I mean, it's out of the 175, 12%, that's a few, but it's not a high number. And those certainly weren't positive cases.
Mhm.
So now we're not quite there yet, but we're soon. We still have football going on right now. Soon moving to our winter sports. So that's where we're at. Middle school boys basketball will start this week. You'll notice that all of these other dates are pushed back about a week. Girls and boys hockey start on the 16th, along with girls basketball and gymnastics. November 23rd starts boys basketball and wrestling, and then the middle school basketball is a split season. So the boys start first and then the girls start up after Christmas. So middle school basketball, those schedules are reduced, and this is kind of where we're at right now. And these things are ever changing. Been working on them probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Normally, middle school basketball does triangulars. Those are moved to single games, just to reduce the number of people, number of kids in the building, kids that they're exposed to. Now, single games, they'll get approximately 10 games in. I think in a normal season, they probably get, maybe 18 games. Because in a triangular, they would play 2 games per night. Now we're just playing 1.
So Eric, is there an AB then, or? two-
No,
No.
we're in the Scenic Bluffs now for middle school basketball. So it's just 1 game. They
Okay.
have talked about extending, maybe playing extra quarters
Sure,
or even playing double headers against 1 team,
okay,
just to get those kids playing time.
so everybody
and
can
opportunities.
participate.
Yep.
Hmm.
And some of the schools are on board with that in the St. Bluffs, some are not. It's going to be kind of as the game comes up, do you want to play extra? Do you want to play another game? There's going to be opportunities for the kids to play. Boys is nice because it's early season. A lot of their season is done before anyone even starts. So they have multiple gyms that they can practice, so we can keep those kids spread out at least until November 16th, I believe, when the girls' basketball starts. So they'll be able to start for the first few weeks at least with low numbers in each gym. And this is going to be a common theme, and we don't have to talk about it right now. We can talk about it at the end, but the fans have got to be determined. The Ridgeon Valley or the Scenic Bluffs has a plan, and I've told everyone that we'll listen to their plan, but it's got to come down to a board and school decision on what we do, but we'll take the recommendations of the conference and then make a decision amongst the board.
And what's so hard about that is that we're in the Scenic Bluffs in the middle school, we're in the Cooley for most of our conferences, we're also in the
Badger.
the Badger for hockey, for girls hockey, so it's you're not dealing with one conference here.
Right. Boys and girls basketball, they will have reduced schedules as well. Normally they could have 24 games. I'm shooting for that 18, 19 games. And my goal for all winter sports is no more than 2 events in a week. That's kind of what my goal has been set. The competition weeks for boys and girls basketball has been shortened as well. Those seasons got kicked back and shortened by a couple of weeks. So there are about 9 weeks where we can get games in. There might be a week where there's 3 games. It just kind of depends. Where I'm at now with girls basketball, I have 18 games, but then I also have DeSoto not in the schedule yet. So I'd obviously like to have those close schools on our schedule. So it's just a matter of, either I slide that game in or I need to remove another game. And school's been really good in understanding about, there's games that we've canceled just because of travel.
You're talking 2 events per sport?
Per sport. Yeah. For certain sports. Certain sports are going to be 1, and I'll kind of go through that. But for basketball, typically basketball will play 2 to 3 times per week in a regular season. And like I said, my goal is to not have more than 2 boys basketball games in a week.
Thank you.
All of that being said, we are meeting on Wednesday with the Cooley Conference. So all of this could change. The Cooley Conference could. And that's, we're going to have to be flexible. So the Cooley Conference could come back and one school could say, we're only going to play one time through the schedule. So then, that could reduce it. So
Is there any discussion on Saturdays?
We are using some. Yeah, there are some. And also there is some teams, we're going to schedule some games over the Christmas break just to kind of spread them out. And again, I'm going to talk in a little bit about why, but transportation is going to be a huge issue in the winter. So
How
we'll get
about,
to that.
and Wednesdays as well? Wednesdays during the day? I'm just throwing out some, because we're in an odd
Yeah,
year
I
here.
suppose, yeah.
I mean,
suppose
we're-
it's not out
Other
of
school
question.
districts have off on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
I suppose it depends on what everyone
It
else is doing.
Depends, yeah, but it could be an option as schools change their schedules. And
Sure. With the travel portion for basketball, boys basketball has great numbers. They're sometimes in upwards of 40 kids on that team. So that is a great thing, but then it also creates issues where our buses are limited to 24 people total. And that will require 2 buses. So that's a challenge that we'll have to tackle as well with the winter schedule. And I put on each one of these WI recommendations. The WI came out with a packet of recommendations, very similar to what they did in the fall. A majority of it is social distance, sanitize your equipment, and some modifications. And I can share that with you guys as well, but we will be following the WI recommendations.
So
at every
even if they're on the same team and playing on the same court for busing, it's still that capacity?
That is the recommendation, yeah. The only exception is if they're in the same family, they sit together, or they live in the same household, I guess, is what the recommendation is. So if they still live in the same household, they sit in the same seat.
Are they wearing a mask during the game?
We'll get to that.
I'm just trying to figure out the bus and then the plane and how that works.
Right, that's what, I don't know.
Well, we'll get.
Okay,
I know
sorry.
we
Would all
touch on it,
agree
but
with Amanda's question.
there are some points in the recommendations that are, what do we want to say here? Hypocritical,
Inconsistent.
inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In it, that is our transportation rule that we have set as a district right now. That's
But
not
I get
being
it for
addressed.
transporting to school.
Yep.
It's not all those, we're not putting just first graders on one, you know what I mean, like.
Yep.
So,
I would welcome a change in that policy if that's something that comes up.
We do have to consider the driver's comfort too. I mean, it's more exposure for a driver. And everything too.
Okay, keep going there.
Girls and boys hockey. That's all right. They, again, will have reduced schedules. Now, this is the first time, you can't see it, sorry.
I'm trying to see and figure out if I can increase
if
it.
I squint,
So now this becomes the first challenge of co-ops. Now, here's where we have a challenge. It really is. It's a challenge of our students and students from other schools coming together in sports. And it's a good thing for those students, but it also in this time creates a challenge as well. Boys and girls hockey typically in a season will have 24 games. My goal again is about 18 or 19, possibly fewer. And I'll talk about why again in just a second. For girls or boys hockey, we eliminated the overnights. There was a multi-school event where they would travel and go to a tournament. We dropped out of that. Again, travel is a challenge with hockey. Our boys hockey team has the last couple of years had excellent numbers. I don't know where they'll be at this year, but there is a chance that they could be in that upper 20s, low 30s. So that could require more than one bus. Again, WI recommendations, fans is the same. We'll talk about that. Girls hockey is in the Badger Conference, and they just came out last Friday saying the Badger Conference has canceled all of their winter sports conference games. Now, that doesn't mean that none of them are playing, but their conference games, the Badger schools can still participate in winter sports, but they don't have a conference season. So they could schedule with us still if they are. I know I reached out to all of them last week. I've heard back from a couple, like Sun Prairie has suspended all winter athletics until January 22nd, which I believe is the end of their second quarter. They're not doing any winter athletics. Dane County's restrictions are tight. And so if the Badger Conference and all of them do not play, which I don't have a ton of confirmation on some of them, that changes the girls hockey schedule immensely, because that's a lot of our games. And girls hockey is a real challenge. If you think about our area, there's Black River Falls and Onalaska. Then the next closest schools are the Eau Claire schools or the Madison schools. So that's a real challenge, and we may have to be creative with the girls hockey schedule. But again, it's kind of to be determined at this point. I haven't, a lot of those schools I'm sure don't know in Dane County what they're doing at this point. So for me to get an answer is tough when they don't know for sure. Gymnastics. Wrong way, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gymnastics, again, we'll follow the WI recommendations. They have, some of those invites have already been canceled. There's a possibility, and I've been working with Darcy and talking with our schools about creating some smaller events where there's not the 8 to 10 schools together, but maybe getting a triangular. And gymnastics is obviously a sport where we can easily socially distance, keep those teams separated. There's not the player-to-player contact in the event. If you can keep it down to 2 or 3 teams, I think that's something that's very manageable and able for us to give those kids an opportunity to get close to what a regular season, close to at least to the number of competitions, not the same level of competition. We won't be able to travel to a Middleton or a Mount Horeb to see those great teams, but we're still going to be able to give them opportunities to compete. Again, there's the challenge of co-ops. We do co-op with DeSoto and Cashton for gymnastics. And so that's something that we'll have to discuss. Wrestling, again, we'll follow the WI recommendations. Early season limits for wrestling are one of the most restrictive right now at this point. They're saying you can wrestle against 1 team every 6 to 7 days, which under the current guidelines would give an athlete about 1/5 of the possible matches that they would get in a normal year. In a normal year, a wrestler would get 50 matches in. Under the current guidelines, which the WI says will be reviewed early and often, they would maybe get a dozen if we were lucky. The numbers is a challenge with wrestling, and we'll have to be creative. Working in smaller pods, we might have to have split practices to keep the number of athletes in the wrestling room at a lower number. Typically, we practice high school, middle school together at the same time, which is a great thing. During COVID, that's probably not a possibility. So we'll have to be creative with rolling mats out in some other areas just to keep those kids separated. We'll practice in pods. When I mean pods, the same kid would work out with the same 2 or 3 kids all the time. So the good news is wrestling is probably has the most experience with health monitoring. We're, as coaches, wrestling coaches, we're pretty in tune to our athletes. We're constantly checking them for their wellness, skin conditions, you name it. So we have experience with our athletes, and I think it's something we can manage. I'm not saying it won't be a challenge. Middle school wrestling practice and competitions, that's at this point, a giant question mark. Most all multi-school events have been canceled at this point. So we have to be creative in bringing in single teams.
So how about elementary school? How we have them come in and practice, those younger, is that
Right.
something?
So
Am I ahead of myself?
yep.
Okay, never mind. I will zip it.
Next page.
Sorry.
So, like I said, we have a Cooley AD meeting. At that Cooley AD meeting on Wednesday, we will talk about the winter recommendations. We're going to talk about what other schools are doing with fans. I would anticipate a majority of the schools' plan at this point is to start where they left off with volleyball. And that was, for most schools, 2 home family members. I think that there is going to be some schools that may be starting to push for a limited number of away fans to come in, but I don't know for sure what the recommendation would be from the Cooley Conference. We will work on finishing our schedules, and we will also talk about what other schools in the conference are doing with their facilities, and that's something we constantly are talking about. Are you letting the youth come in? And that's something I have on this list. Are you letting the youth come in to use the facilities? How are you handling that? So the winter challenges, the number one, I think, is one of the bigger ones is travel, the number of teams and buses required. In a normal year, if we have 3 teams going on the road in one night, that's a pretty big challenge to get 3 buses going or 3 drivers going to different places. If we had a boys hockey and a boys basketball going at the same night, that'd be 4 buses right there possibly. So that could be a challenge. we'll have to be creative and I try to do my best to schedule, but there's only so many dates and that the facilities will hold as well.
And the earlier release time has helped that on some of those that we get to leave a little later. But a hockey going middle, I mean, they're gonna leave probably as close to 2:30 as possible or whatever that would be. And then you do have to have a substitute driver to take the regular route.
Yep.
How about Sundays?
I think there's, on Sundays, I
Mhm.
think there's always been an agreement with the local group that we avoid Sundays as much as possible.
Okay, I mean, this year's just such an odd,
Yeah,
and even if it were, however you want to look at it, I just trying to figure out how to space things apart, plus throw in weather, Eric, you're not even talking weather yet.
no.
Reschedules.
Right, so I'm just
Rescheduling.
trying to think of what that might look like on a Sunday afternoon or something.
Yeah, Sundays and Wednesdays have always been
Yep.
kind of those days that you don't touch. I know at times there has been some flexibility with those days,
Mhm.
at least with Wednesdays there has been, so.
Well, and with people doing more online and virtually with those organizations as well, and there can be some flexibility of when you're participating or if it's recorded, just trying to figure out
Sure.
what some other options might be without making people angry.
Right. Number 2, indoor compared to outdoor, and that's obviously a big change. I think if you saw the UW study that just came out, there was a study that UW did, and the big conclusion was that a lot of students in our state were able to participate, and there wasn't this giant spread of COVID through athletics. That being said, a lot of those sports were outside. Now we're moving indoor, and obviously there's a higher risk indoor than there is outdoor. So that will be a challenge, and we'll continue to do the things that we've been doing and be diligent with screening student athletes and taking temperatures and those kind of things to make sure that we're being as safe as we can. Number 3, our team sizes and available practice facilities. Again, that's just something we'll have to evaluate to see the number of kids that come out. Can we safely have 30 kids in the high school gym practicing at one time? Might be we may need to be more creative and have different shifts where a dozen come in at this time and a dozen more come in later, and people will just need to be flexible with that. Number 4 is frequency and number of home events. Obviously with volleyball, we were looking at one volleyball game every couple of weeks. Now we're looking at multiple events per week. I kind of printed out a home event calendar, and there's a lot of weeks where there's 3 or 4 home events going on here in our facility. Number 5, and this is the question of the day right here, is at what point do our facilities become available to our youth sports, our clubs, or any outside organizations? At this point, we haven't allowed them to access the facilities. With the winter coming, I'm sure that club basketball, I'm sure that club wrestling, youth wrestling, we are asking that question, and I just continue to say we're evaluating, but as of now, that is not allowed. So I don't know if I have the answer for that, or if anyone has the answer for that now. I can envision a safe way that we could bring in our youth. They are in our buildings with some training, I think, and some small numbers. I think we could easily pull that off. Not easily, but we could pull that off. And I'd like to have those kids have an opportunity to participate, at least to practice. So,
Eric, one thing I know, another club basketball group is doing in another part of the state, only because my nephew is one of the organizers. And what they're doing this fall is they are being allowed to use the facilities. So that's the first question. They have a place, but they're keeping everything in the house and doing a bunch of, well, they'll do a lot of drills and stuff, but they're gonna do 3-on-3s
Sure.
and try and keep kids, but it's only our own kids, so
Right.
you aren't playing
Right.
other kids, but that's just a thought. I'm sure
Well,
there's lots of
that's certainly an option. I mean,
people that
that's-
have
yeah.
thought of those things, at least, if you go that route, the students are still getting to play.
Sure.
And maybe you would just plunk 2 grade levels together, and then you can pair off. That keeps your numbers down still, but
Right.
allows those kids to have some practice and
Yep.
stuff like that. That's just a thought that I know somebody else is doing.
And I do know there are some schools in our conference that are allowing their kids to come in and use the facilities. They are not allowing other schools to come in
Right.
for games or hosting any of the leagues or any,
The tournaments.
right,
Yeah.
correct. So. Number 6, number of available staff to supervise events. I can tell you that it's, in the past where you could just come in and plop down and watch the game and handle any crowd issues that you needed to. That wasn't what this year volleyball was. It was, and Mike helped me out several times, getting the teams in, explaining the procedures, just the sheer setup of making sure the chairs are spread apart, the sanitizers out, making sure that they know where their bathroom is,
Getting the media
getting the media in, things that, and then letting people in the door and checking them off. It's quite a task, and it's not the same as just being able to show up and monitor the game. So there's a lot of procedures and a lot of things that we need to follow to pull these games off. Locker rooms, this fall, we did not allow other teams to use our locker rooms. We asked them to come dressed. My question I put on there, is it reasonable and safe to come dressed and leave in uniform? In the middle of the winter, is it reasonable and safe for a basketball player to come in their basketball uniform and then throw their sweats on over the top after they're all sweated up and hop on a bus again and when it's 15 below out? I don't know if that's the right answer.
They
I
have
don't
to
know
be
if
able
that's
to use the
reasonable.
They have to be able to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that's something we may need to change. But then at the same time, then that also adds, then we need to sanitize that locker room but I think that's probably a step that we need to take, is to allow those teams at least to use them to change and shower if needed, so. Number 8, the governor's mandate, I believe it's till November 21st. So your question earlier is would a basketball player be wearing a mask until that mandate? There is currently no exceptions on the governor's mandate, and the WI has said that, and they have reached out to see, certain sports. If you think about a gymnast on a balance beam, if the mask comes up when they're in the middle of a flip, obviously there's a safety issue there. So the WI, I know, has been communicating with the governor and working on some exceptions, but until there are, we just have to go on the notion that if we have to wear a mask to play basketball, we'll wear a mask. So, and then number 9, the postseason. Everyone wants to know if there's going to be a postseason. Nobody really knows at this point, so we'll wait and see. And then obviously there's more, but
so
it could go on.
N95s, I don't know what kind of studies there are as far, or how accessible it is to get an N95 for someone participating indoors.
The
And
WI has came out with a statement saying N95 should not be worn in competitions. I don't know if there's during
Because
heavy exertion, maybe if there's restrictions on breathing. I don't know. I could get my literature over there, but I know that there's a statement in there that they should not wear athletes should not wear N95s or surgical.
I'd love to see why,
I could look into that for you.
because that would make sense, actually. And I know it's thicker. I warn them. I know what they feel like. There's different types, though. Some don't have the metal bar, so you wouldn't have that. You can reuse them, so you wouldn't have, there's a way to keep yours and keep it safe.
And I have it over. Mike, if you want, oh, you're on the last part. there.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of my thank you to our ball coaches and athletes. I feel have done an excellent job managing all the extra tasks and responsibilities to keep each other safe. And they've been very flexible, changing schedules, having players in, players out. And they've just done a great job during this uncertain time. So I'd like to thank them. And then the last is a huge thank you to Tyler Gabrielson. I don't know if any of you have been able to see the live streams. He's just done a super job getting all of those home events out there for people to watch. And it's really, I've watched, my daughter plays volleyball, and I've watched a lot of the live streams from the other school, and his is one of the best. It really is. It's reliable. You can see pretty good. And, he's kind of taken that task upon himself, and he deserves a thank you. He really does.
Well, and on that note, I think we need to take a minute here to recognize what Eric's done over this fall season, to give our kiddos an opportunity that there are a lot of kids that didn't get that. Eric, I don't know how many hours you worked over this fall, and I know you're going to yell at me for calling you out right now, but I don't care. This was truly an impressive feat this fall, and I know Eric and I have had the conversations of just really understanding what you did this fall, and I truly appreciate it. I know that there are hundreds, literally, over 100 kids that truly appreciate it. So thank you.
Sorry, we're not more here. I think we should have a big assembly. Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess my only, I know that you'll find out more on Wednesday, and as you build your schedule and all that, and as much as I want to be able to make, provide what you can for you,
Mhm.
I think the big question is, we barely have enough gyms in a regular year with packing them full of
Right.
kids on each side of the gym,
Right.
is there really gonna be?
Well,
Time
it
gyms.
would definitely have to be modified. It wouldn't be the normal. I think that if you're giving a youth basketball player one night in the gym compared to 3 nights in the gym, I think they'd take it at this point compared to none. I think they would welcome any opportunity to come in, practice, get to be around their peers, get to be around the coaches, and learn their skills.
So devil's advocate, and I have no idea what the answer is, but if I'm a community member and I want to come in here and walk, and that's my exercise,
Right.
and you're allowing a 10-year-old, are you going to allow people to come in and walk as well?
Right. My only argument would be those kids are already in the
Absolutely.
district, already in the buildings there.
I'm not saying it's a good.
Yeah, no,
I'm not
I don't
saying it's a
know
good
that
Are
is
you
argument.
ready for that? Yep.
We typically have adults walking, we typically have volleyball, adult basketball, and pickleball. And we also have indoor soccer that
Yeah.
uses the facilities as well as basketball and wrestling. So,
And hockey, I know their association has gathered, and they weren't sure what they were going to permit for people being in that building. And so I don't know how that works with our school district as well. If they're hosting events, what does that look like for our kids being in those facilities? And I don't know what they're.
I believe they are. I think they're developing a plan, but I think they are offering some youth opportunities for hockey.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yes, Eric, the Hockey Association, from my understanding, has done quite a few things about how they're going to operate for practices and any games, where they enter, where they exit, how to keep them apart.
I would 100% agree with you, Robert. I've had conversations with them, and they've been working on this for quite a while as well. And I think they're fully prepared to do the things they need to do to keep it safe out there. So I actually had a conversation last week with them. So I guess the only real question is, at what point do we allow our students to come in, or do we wait and see what other schools are doing? I don't know.
So obviously, no matter what happens, right, youth programs would be expected to follow all protocols that our high school and middle school coaches would be expected to follow. So that would be, I feel like it's a given, but I feel like we need to state that,
Absolutely.
that we definitely need to make that known.
Well, I can only speak from my experience as having younger children when they were involved in those. And it's different with younger folks, dropping them off, or it depends on where you live. And it's an hour practice, and I live a certain distance away. So I would sit in a other space while they practiced and did other things because of the drive. So
That really wouldn't be a possibility right now.
exactly. But then how do you regulate it? So are we going to pay somebody to regulate the operation of the doors?
Yeah, the doors alone would be.
I like how Eric looked at me and then looked at Mike.
These are conversations we had.
Right.
Right.
What I say is with youth athletics brings parents.
Absolutely.
It has to. I mean, they have to get here. And could you have a rule? You drop your kid at the door, we take them. Yeah. Kids 5 minutes late, they're not getting in. We can do all this. It's just gonna take some protocols and rules, and
It's people.
can't just prop a door and let people come and go as they want, which we went away from that as much as we can. But now it's real. It's not an option.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely added responsibility for the coaches, people running.
And your coaches aren't staff.
Correct. They would take some training there as well.
And where do you draw the line, because you guys are so overextended? I just go ahead, Rob.
It's going to take some extra training, especially for the wrestling coach.
Very true, Robert.
But in all seriousness, Eric, thanks for all you've done. You've done over and beyond in trying to keep our young people safe and allowing them to participate in athletics. I can't thank you enough for all your efforts.
Thank you.
And what I don't want to see is we allow youth, and then all of a sudden that interferes with our high school students being able to participate. I really just don't want those seniors to not have that senior year because of spreading the virus. It's all important, but where do we set our priorities as a district this year?
Do you, I know, so I'm sure it's different everywhere, but is there any sort of guidance from the get-go of, do we travel to counties that are in red if we're following the Harvard model for education? So I've seen a lot of that where people are saying, well, we can't be in person, but we can still play sports, and isn't education the priority? And so, is there any bit of that into this, or?
Well, we've worked with the county quite extensively over the last few months. They originally were attempting to have those conversations with other counties. The reality is every county is one so different, and there are different pockets of the counties where it affects each community so differently. And the schools are, there are schools in some counties with double-digit case counts and some with none. And so it's like, how do you determine? And so kind of painting with that wider brush has definitely gone by the wayside almost now, Eric, right? There's like nobody doing that as far as I'm aware anymore, even though that was the complete conversation in August, right? That everybody was having. I'm not hearing that hardly at all anymore. And the Harvard model is definitely one model. We look at that model every day. So, as far as to keep us ourselves informed. But even for us, I mean, it's been daily back and forth between orange and red for the last 5 business days. Just one day. How do you make decisions like that? And especially when nothing changed in the schools from Tuesday to Wednesday, right? Or Wednesday to Thursday. But we could play yesterday, we can't play today, we could play tomorrow. It's very difficult to make decisions like that.
If a school is 100% virtual, I don't see how we should play them. If they don't think it's safe to be face-to-face academically, how do we participate in co-curriculars?
And I think that there are 2 sides to every situation. One could argue that they're a safer school to play because they're not having all of those exposures.
Because the only kids that they're exposed to are the kids on the team.
Or I'm just saying, if it's all virtual, they must be virtual for a reason. They have to be virtual for a reason, like the parents or grandparents or the community.
I understand,
So that's why I'm trying to, I just don't, if it's not safe for them to academically be in school, then how can it be safe for those students to?
Well, and every county is completely different.
Right. I know.
Vernon County can be in the red and we have 0 active cases in the school.
Exactly.
So then is it fair to our kids to say,
right,
you can't participate in athletics?
Well, and again,
because Vernon County's in the red?
Right. We've had those conversations, but what I'm saying though is if a school has switched to only virtual because of an outbreak, then how?
Well, there's a difference. I mean, some schools,
the reason they went virtual.
Some schools go virtual because of staffing issues.
I think that's a different conversation. I think if we say all schools that are attending virtually, we were the only ones in the area doing a cohort. There were some schools that were hesitant to play us, right? Or at least questioning it. And then there were multiple superintendents that reached out to me and they actually felt better, playing against us because again, that limited that exposure. So again, I think it's, you find whatever you want to look for in this one.
In the COVID guidelines from WIA are on their website, correct, Eric?
There's a copy right here.
And they have, if I remember when I read through, there's some specific where if there's a hotspot in a certain community, it's not going to be an issue because those games are not even only going to be canceled for this week. But there's a period of time where they can't, right? I mean, if an athlete on a team, the whole team shuts down. I mean, it was.
It's 2 weeks.
It was pretty big. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of, I think a lot of that's going to take care of itself is what I was going to say is, I mean, I don't think they're going to escape by in a bad situation.
Right.
And I also don't understand how we can participate in 2 a week just because of exposure. You know how we have the cohorts, which keeps our kids together, and then we have almost a week in between, and it seems that that's a really good model. So how do we do that athletically as well?
We did it for the fall sports.
Yeah, I don't think you would be able to.
Yeah, the best thing the further we go into this, the more we learn. And if we continue to be nimble and take whatever guidance that's out there under advisement, then we should be okay. I don't think we can make a decision here, as far as what we're going to do a month from now. So I think that's your challenge, and you have done an awesome job. So again, thanks for doing that. But it's just one of those things that we'll have to continue to do, and each thing is going to have to be looked at separately as to what's the reason that it happened and how do you how do you go about handling it.
Yeah, and I think that's just it. There's just going to be lots of questions, and then I think if people just ask the questions, think about it. You know what I mean? Like that's the best part is just to kind of.
You could have 1,000 contingencies.
Right.
But
that's why I think it'll be end up so tricky for those youth sports because you have to be so nimble with the high school and cancellations and all that, that to try to fit in youth, man, I feel for you, for you to try to coordinate all that.
Right.
It's a big job.
Or maybe we can't do everything because it just is too much. I mean, I hate to say that, my kids participated in everything. You know, you have young children, you want them to, but sometimes we just can't do it all well. And you've done very well.
We learned from volleyball,
Mhm.
you know, and it was restricted as far as
Yep.
who could come in. It was a restricted schedule. It was, you know, so there were all the protocols in place, and then to start there makes sense. The
Mhm.
challenge is now, just as a society, we're all moving indoors,
Right.
and it's getting colder, and, you know, that's the.
Yep.
That's really the other X factor that's gonna play into all of this.
We also let others use our facility and they didn't follow protocol.
Mhm.
So that's a, you know,
But we, you know, and even that's, we could have had families, you know, not practice protocol and
Mhm.
go to events and go shopping, and, you know, we can't control everything. It's hard.
thank you for the update.
Yeah.
You have anything else? It's a lot.
Yep, so what we're gonna do, you know, we'll just keep you posted. That's really where, you know, our job has been, you know, transformed over the last few months, and it'll continue to be. You know, there are moments where we'll communicate something and that can change within hours.
Mhm.
And I know you know that now and you're used to it, but just be fully prepared for that.
And I will say the adult events, I'm sorry. I mean, I have a husband that likes pickleball almost more than me. And I just think they're done. You know,
At this
Coming
point,
in.
yep.
yes,
At this point, yeah.
they are not in the building. They don't have children in the building. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to do that to them.
Well,
I
that's the
really
message-
am, but I
That's
just,
the message I've been conveying with anyone that asks at this point, is that, you know, we'll revisit it at a later time, but as of now, our policy is we're not allowing
exactly.
outside reservations. So,
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
So I don't have to be the bad guy.
you pay me to
All right. So Eric, thank you for all that information. This is the 2020 WIA, if anybody wants to look at that. If not, Eric, I'm going to give it back to you. If you don't mind, I would like, it says can decrease airflow. I think that's pretty loose. So are they going to not have anybody wearing masks? I mean, I don't.
This just says for the N95, they do recommend that cloth mask is one.
So I'd really like to know their data that supports the one versus the other, and why one is okay and one is not, other than that's just how they feel.
Correct.
But thank you. The next item is the tax levy. Certify the 2020-2021 tax levy. A motion to certify the tax levy in the amount of $5,326,525 with the general fund tax levy of $4,444,860, community service fund tax levy of $45,000, and the debt service levy of $836,665. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Marina. Any discussion? With that, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 2020-21 budget, motion to approve the 2021 budget as presented. Is there a motion?
So
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consider a motion to move it to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 19.851C to discuss and take action if appropriate regarding employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of a public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a voice vote. Start with Amanda.
Aye.
Ken? Matt? I vote aye. Robert?
Aye.
Marina?
Aye.
All right, we are in closed session.
Let me verify.